All right, Marvin, we are live. So, welcome back to Under Pressure Live. Today, we are very excited to have with us Marvin Joles from Blacktop Banter. Marvin has been in the asphalt industry for 19 years, and we're very excited to talk to him today. Marvin, I have been told that you are doing some unprecedented stuff, some really cool things with your podcast, Blacktop Banter, and within the asphalt industry. So, I'm very excited to talk to you today and delve into it to see what parallels we can draw to other service industries such as pressure washing and what pressure washers can learn from the information you have to offer.
Oh man, I appreciate it. I'm happy to be here. Always a pleasure to be on the receiving end of an interview versus giving them all. We do one a week here, and a good majority of the time, my guests are my friends, and
Mm-hmm.
usually by the time we're done with the interview, they're my friends anyways.
I'm
So it,
sure.
it goes really well. But there's a lot of parallels between my industry and surrounding industries and the service industry in general. I started out as a young kid in high school doing roofing and seamless gutters. So, jump from that industry to another industry, and now podcast industry, I guess. So.
Wow. So, for anyone who doesn't know you, would you do me a favor and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about all the pots you have your hands in, so everyone gets an idea of what you're up to?
Yeah, man, it's been a wild ride. I'm Marvin Joles the third actually, but you can just stick with Marvin Joles. That's fine. And yeah, so I mean that's where I'm at. I'm in Wisconsin, but man, I move all over the country over the wintertime, interviewing my friends, doing speaking gigs, making content. And sometimes I'm there just being curious at my friends' businesses and things. And I've always been a geek about how businesses run and function, especially service businesses, right? Like mom and pop stuff,
Mm-hmm.
because you still get to keep that family aspect to it, and I really enjoy that. But yeah, I mean, I started Wiscoat right out of high school. That's our main asphalt maintenance business is Wiscoat, and we are in our 18th year. Next year will be 19 completely. And a couple of years ago, started Dubuque Asphalt Maintenance as well. So we covered Dubuque, Iowa as well. And Blacktop Banter, man, that's been an amazing one there too. We have a lot of guests now. We've had guests from the NFL, guests from NASCAR, guests from all over, and we've had combat sport guests and X Games guests. Where I'm actually going to the end of September and seeing my friend Colby race downhill in Ohio. So he'll be on a street luge, you know, tearing up the asphalt, man. So I do all those things. I write articles for Pavement Magazine, been a speaker at National Pavement Expo and other places beyond that. Most recently, spoke at Heinz Stadium there in Pittsburgh where the Steelers play and did the podcast live. Was fortunate enough to be invited there. And dude, I really like to geek out about the asphalt industry. And geeking out has kind of led me to invest in some companies within that industry too, as well. So I'm all asphalt, man. Everything we do. I like to kind of pick the brains of people outside the asphalt industry very often because I found a lot of ways that I could bring outside influence into my business or our industry that's really helped both of those grow.
I'm sure we love bringing on people like you, Marvin, onto the show because there's so much opportunity to learn from similar businesses that why wouldn't you pull someone in who has a fresh perspective and maybe a different perspective? So I'm very happy to start off you know with a basic question of I from what I've learned of you, you're self-made, you're an entrepreneur, you started this business from nothing. So I'm really curious, how do you do that? I know there's the old saying that you can bootstrap a business and just pull the boots up and figure it out. But what is it that was your secret sauce to just get started and to go on such a tear?
Man, to be honest with you, probably what started it all was just ignorance. Like I didn't realize what I was getting myself into early on, right? Like I was just this guy's like, man, I worked a job in high school at a gas station making pizzas, and I hated it. And I'd grown up doing roofing and seamless gutters for my uncle, and I just enjoyed working with my hands, being outside. I enjoyed the fact that it was a family business and I could be
Mhm.
around family. I could kind of be lax a little bit, but also we were busting our tails every day, and I felt a sense of accomplishment. So I was like, well, I'm going to do that.
Mhm.
And I was just like, well, I'm just gonna start my own seal coating business and jump into it. And to be honest with you, not realizing really what I was going to be getting myself into probably was a huge asset, but also I was very unprepared, right, for what happened.
Mhm.
So, um, we're in winter months here, and as a young man, and you make $100 a day, or whatever, you got beer money. You're a young guy, cruising in your truck, doing what you want to do. We got cornfield parties and stuff out here. That was all right for a while until I got married, and then I was like, oh, all right, I'm gonna have to make some more money. And then winter would hit and things would get tight here. You can't seal coat in the winter, and I wasn't in any kind of position to snow plow or do any of that kind of stuff. So I learned really quick that I gotta be like the squirrels here and collect all those nuts and stuff in the summer, and then be able to use those over the winter. And really sacrificed a lot early on because I wanted to make a run of this thing, at least to get to a success level, right?
Mhm.
I hadn't seen, I knew names of big asphalt maintenance companies in the state, but I'd never seen how they function or talked to any of the owners or anything like that. So really, sacrifice was the main key early on for me to get to a certain point. Like my wife and I did without of a lot of little luxuries because I was stacking those chips for springtime when
Mhm.
we could bite off a piece of equipment and kind of expand Wisco a little bit.
Wow. So that I'm sure is a story that resonates with a lot of our audience. I'm sure that as much with your audience, we have a lot of pressure washers that are just starting out and want to learn how to grow their business. And they may come from a family business. They may just love working, like you said, with your hands, being outside, taking home X amount per day, and they have that beer money. But a lot of the guys listening to this podcast want to take it to the next level. And so one of the things that I'm thinking right away from what you said about, stacking those nuts and having them for later on in the year is cash flow. In the pressure washing industry, there's seasonality, there's cycles. And so to kind of try to even out that cash flow and have revenue throughout the year, we see a lot of pressure washers trying to add ancillary services. So is the asphalt industry something that you think they could dip their toes in to kind of level off that cash flow throughout the year?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on how busy they would be during the summer with their pressure washing business, right? And I mean, I know there are companies in the South too that, they don't stop at all. One of my good friends, Chris Love, owns Love's Asphalt Solutions. He never stops. So I
Mhm.
always tell him this time of year, like, man, I can see the finish line. He's like, I can't. It's 30 years in front of me, right? And it's not just fall here. So yeah, I think so because vice versa, there are companies that are asphalt seal coating companies or maintenance companies or whatever, and they've applied surface washing and pressure washing to their business to clean some of these surfaces in different parts of the country to prep them for seal coating and things. We have a surface cleaner here. We have a pressure washer here. We rarely use it.
Mhm.
We have such a good technique where we are, and we're not in a position to where we would absolutely need it. There are some times where we get out there where I'm like, man, if we could have came and watched this a day beforehand, it would save us from busting our backs today. But we bear down and bust our backs that day. But some of these guys, they need pressure washing to get moss and debris and impacted dirt up and all that stuff. One of the bigger things in our industry is asphalt. The asphalt sealer has changed a lot within the last 5 years or so, really the 10 years or so. And it's become more eco-friendly, which
Mhm.
causes it to be eco-friendly, but also it causes it to have less bite on pavement surfaces. And we notice that underneath trees where there's a lot of organic material pressed into the pavement, that the sealer will come apart. So a lot of the acidity from walnut trees, walnuts get crunched into the driveway, pine cones, pine needles, leaves, all that stuff. So there is opportunity on both sides of the spectrum, I think, for it. And one thing about our industry, similar to the pressure washer industry, is there's an ease of access to get in. It's relatively inexpensive, but there is a huge learning curve to do it correctly. And I know that on the pressure washing side as well.
Mhm. Yeah. So I know that you had told me that so there's some back and forth with the asphalt industry and the pressure wash industry. So I'm curious, do you just asking a little bit further into that? Do you see that? that there's maybe asphalt companies that are interested in pressure washing, and pressure washing industries that should be interested in asphalt. More than just the cash flow question of trying to even out the cash flow. Do you think that there are industries that align, and you're like, hey, we're already here at this job, why don't we kind of see if we can offer both?
Well, yeah, I mean, dude, the opportunity to upsell
Mhm.
every single time should never get passed by, right? And even on our end, if we came across a surface, and we do sometimes, right? We'll come across surfaces where it needs special prep, and we don't offer that in-house, or just logistically and financially it doesn't make sense for us to take the time to do that when we can just be out servicing the clients the way that we do through our services. So we will, I have hired a pressure washer subcontractor once this year, and then we hire out also like street sweeping.
Mhm.
We'll subcontract that out and just have the area prepped before we would make a mobility call to go out and do it. So, there is opportunity there on both sides of the spectrum, one way or the other, I think, for people to take advantage of it both ways. I mean, I I have a really good friend, Ryan Bayan. He owns a company called Ginger Cat Seal Coating out on the East Coast. And literally the guy will throw numbers at me that they increased just by offering pressure washing.
Wow.
And dude, just the numbers of offering that service are better numbers than some of the years I had early on, just that one facet of that service.
Wow. And that speaks volumes. Yeah, absolutely impressive. So I guess my question to you now is, with the podcast, I want to dive a little bit into your podcast.
Sure.
You cover a lot of different aspects of business here, of small business entrepreneurship. It's not just asphalt, right? You have on all these guests from a wide range of backgrounds. And
Yeah.
is that all in service of growing asphalt companies?
Well, I think it is, but also, we come from an industry where I can look back at myself now being, almost 20 years in the industry, and if I would have known on the business side then what I know now,
Mhm.
I could have shorthanded my plateau of 8 years or whatever it was. I hit a certain point and I'm like, okay, I guess this is it. And it completely was not it. But I didn't have the guidance or a community right there to show it to me to be able to help me out with that. So yeah, it's all in service to, the industry that has given back to me and to giving back to my family and the families of the people that work here for us. But we have a lot of wide range of guests. Some of the guys that drive NASCAR now have become good friends of mine. We
Wow.
always love to talk about the way pavement is affecting theirs. We recently had an IndyCar driver on, James Rowe, who became a friend of mine. He races the Indy Light Series, and he was telling us about different pavements from different parts of the world, right? And we've had guys on that are from the green industry, and we'll talk about, and green industry, if no one knows, is lawn care and landscape. And they talk about the similarities between how they run their business and run our business. What really is the most similar is how people are that run
Mhm.
those businesses, right? So there's always a connecting point, no matter what, even if it's not the asphalt industry, but it's guys that are running their own businesses. There's always a connecting point of what works and what doesn't work. There's a reason why guys that do pressure washing, lawn care, and asphalt maintenance run Jobber or whatever other kind of software that they're going to use, right? So there's a lot of connections between there. Well, full disclosure, we don't run Jobber, but
Mhm.
there is a connection between a lot of the same softwares, products, power tools, all that stuff across the whole spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that some of the topics you talk about, like one episode I checked out before I had you come on was the marketing and branding episode, and that is across any industry, not just home services, not just
Right.
contracts. So there's all this opportunity to learn and cut off the learning curve. And I want to get into some of the topics you've covered on the podcast, but before we do that, you had mentioned, how you in your past you've reached plateaus, and that you now know things that you didn't know when you started. And I'm sure that if you could restart from with what you know now, it would be a totally different story on your
Oh
growth.
yeah.
So what was it that you learned along the way? What were some of the key takeaways you learned along the way?
Really, we had a chance to restart here with Dubuque Asphalt Maintenance a couple years ago. And that company's putting up better numbers in 2 years than what I was probably year 8, year 9, right, with
Wow.
Wisco to start. And a lot of that's just because I'm being able to apply the knowledge that I've learned and experience I've learned through it all. But, some of those major keys early on was there's a saying, right, that says, your frequency is what you frequently see. I seen the same thing for 8 years, 8 or 9 years. And it wasn't that the business wasn't successful. It just wasn't at the, there's something in me, man, when I see somebody that's crushing it and they're in my area, not physically, but just in my area of expertise, that I want to chase that. The fact that they figured something out to be able to elevate themselves and scale their business to get to that level, I want to be there. So that I realized that within the green industry community, and dude, I bit off a good chunk of money, and I went down to the Green Industry Expo, which they've changed the name of that thing now, and surrounded myself with that community that had been created in that industry, and said, all right, I have to create this community, because if not, I'm not going to attract the people that I need to talk to and be around that are crushing it, whose brains I need to pick.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the main thing. I mean, I wanted to change what I frequently see so that it changed my frequency. By osmosis, changing the people that I was around more often, all of a sudden I had something to talk about with these guys, and I was able to pick their brains and be around them. Next thing I know, by osmosis, like I said, our top line starts to increase. Well, then all of a sudden I start asking these guys, hey, how do you get your top line to increase to this? And thankfully, I haven't let anyone down, and they trust me fully in my industry, and they'll be like, well, kid, you got to do this. And then you got to do this, and then you got to do this. So that was the main thing, man. You got to change your atmosphere if you're looking to excel. And there's paid coaching, and people are always like, oh man, I don't know about paid coaching. Dude, some of these people are so busy to justify it. You may have to pay, right, to be in their presence, but I promise you, they're going to deliver. If they're charging you to coach, they're going to deliver. And if not, then bail and find another one. But I was lucky enough that didn't exist in my space, and I was like a gnat, and I would annoy them until they would tell me the answers to the questions I had.
Wow. And so that is so important, because you're right. It is about who you surround yourself with. What kind of conversations are you taking part in? And how can you cut off your learning curve by learning from people who've been there before? And
Yeah.
so I love what you're saying about the coaching groups and just your general atmosphere you surround yourself with, the community you're involved in. But for those in the audience that are saying, hey, I don't have the time right now, I don't have the capital to be able to afford that, there's other options too. That is stuff you definitely have to track down, and you kind of have to make that work. You have to figure out how to make that happen, right?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we have podcasts now, and you can learn a lot
Bingo.
from being a third party in being involved in the conversations as a listener. So at Blacktop Banter, have you had conversations like that you'd say, hey, these are conversations you have to check out and be a part of? Just hop in.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about that 1 year, right, where I was like, okay, something has to change. I literally spent probably 6 or 8 months listening to Gary V nonstop. Like, I literally felt like I was sitting on the couch with the guy. We would be, having family movie night. I would put my earbuds in, and I'd be listening to Gary V on the couch, soaking that in. While we were out to work, I would pop those out, and I would put it on my hip like I had a phone clip. Like, not a lot of people wear those now, but some people still do. And I would blast that iPhone at top noise. And a crazy thing, I actually just finished an article about this for Pavement Magazine. I noticed that when I made that my atmosphere, right, that the guys that were in my atmosphere physically, the guys that worked for me, it changed their atmosphere around. The things that they started to say and the things that they started to think changed. And to be honest with you, that was a catalyst moment. Our business has scaled 400%, if not more, since that year, right? Since that moment. And we're doing well. I'm still not to the point that I want to be at, because I have some friends that are absolute sharks. And I hope I'm never, ever, ever at the top, because I love the chase. I love the journey. And that's how we do it, man. It's literally the main key to do it.
So I'm so glad, as we both are podcasters, I'm so glad you talked to the power of podcasts today, because seriously, you can just get involved in the conversation. Like you said, you felt
Yeah,
like Gary Vee was right
yeah,
there. And it's
yeah,
so easy. There's so many podcasts, whether it's focused on your industry or not, there's so many podcasts that focus on the business side of many industries that you can really take information from and translate it to your business. So
yeah,
I
dude. I mean, that coupled with books, right?
Mhm.
You know, when I first read the very first business insight I got was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. They're like, read that book. So I read
Classic.
that book. Oh, dude, super classic. I get to the end, and the guy is literally imagining himself at a table with these five guys that no longer live,
Mhm.
right? And he's like, this is my circle. Literally, you can do that. And we have enough content now that you can do that, whether it's just looking up quotes from somebody who passed away, whether you read their book, right? Napoleon Hill.
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. And literally, I can picture myself in the main character's shoes all the time and making moves judged off of what I read from Napoleon Hill or from what I listened to a podcast, right?
Yeah.
And there's a couple I pay really sharp attention to. And it literally impacts the way that I function daily life and my business as well. You don't always have to jump into a coach and get a full course and do all that stuff. If you can multitask and put your earbuds in and listen to Under Pressure or Blacktop Banter, dude, you're in good shape.
Absolutely. I know we both have fantastic guests on. We've been so lucky, but I'm curious. We'll dive into your podcast in a moment, but with the other podcasts and books you mentioned, are there any resources that podcast books, whatever it was that you checked out and that really took your business to the next level, your mindset to the next level? What books and podcasts can you recommend?
Right. So, as I mentioned, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. I really enjoyed How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I was an introvert mainly because I had self-esteem issues, right, all throughout high school and whatnot, in middle school and whatnot. And that was the hard part. Was I needed something to tell me that I was going to benefit immensely by turning into an extrovert.
Mhm.
And Think and Grow Rich would help that, but also How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I really enjoy that one. Crush It by Gary Vee. And then, as I mentioned before, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I love that one because it doesn't feel like a textbook, but there's
Mhm.
so many parallels to somebody who follows their dreams and then making sure that they keep their eye on what's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And we thank you for the resources. We have a couple of questions here.
Yeah.
One actually from a Blacktop Banter fan. So Brad Williams was supposed to be in this with us today, but he got stuck in an airport. So unfortunately, we couldn't make that happen. But but Nikki cannot wait to meet you, Marvin, and she's a big Blacktop Banter fan, as I'm sure many people that listen to Under Pressure will be after the show.
Hey man, yeah, I get to connect with Nikki once in a while on LinkedIn. Beautiful resource, as we were saying. Those are outside resources. I feel like Nikki and Brad are in my circle. I haven't got to meet them in person yet. We missed each other in Nashville by a week,
Oh,
but that's the way it goes. But yet, just because you're not with them doesn't mean they're in your circle. What's crazy is to see those parallels, right, between your circle and then your actual physical circle of where you live. And you're just
mhm.
like, man, I'm in two completely different worlds at the same time.
And that's the amazing thing with the internet. Not only do you have the physical circle in your community, but you also have the circle of podcasts. The podcasts you're listening to, those are kind of like more distant circle people. But then you can have people online that you meet in a similar community to you who are having the same conversations. And that is so powerful. I always say to people that if you're looking to start a company now, from whether it's pressure washing or asphalt, I'd say to any contractor, go look online. There's a community for you of a bunch, thousands of people asking the same questions that you're asking.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And one of the major keys when I first started doing all this is I started a Facebook group for seal coaters, and literally it was a lot of stuff that went in right away, and then that got filtered out, right, because it was like a new
Mhm.
shiny toy and everybody was trying it all out and everything. But yeah, once you're able to get into those communities and those groups, there was a lot of advice and stuff in there.
So Nikki said again, Jake Arrington, I missed the beginning. Did he give advice for pressure washers who are considering adding paving surfaces? in the shift away from residential cleaning. So I know we touched on this. Would you touch on this again?
Yeah. So there's a big difference between asphalt maintenance and paving. When you talk paving, you are talking about a lot of overhead. Like you're a guy with the brass ones or a gal with the brass ones. Shout out to the paving lady in Florida. She's got a pair, man. It's a lot. I mean, these pieces of equipment are 6-figure pieces of equipment when you jump into paving. Now, if we're talking asphalt maintenance, what we do here at my business is, I mean, it's an easy kind of transition. There are companies out there that make pieces of equipment that are within the thousands of dollars range. I'm sure there's people that, pressure washed it and the customer said, hey, now I need to get this seal coated. And a smart business owner would be like, well, I can go to the hardware store and get 6 buckets if you want, and I can seal coat this. And that's their upsell. That's how they get into it. I mentor a lot of people that are in that ballpark, right? Where they started doing something else and then they want to jump into the asphalt maintenance side. And once they realize that if they build their business and brand correctly, it's more lucrative than what they started in, right? So, I mean, for advice for that, my main thing would be is to get educated in doing it correctly. Because if not, you can run into some issues and it may deter you from, going farther in this industry. But Blacktop Banter's there. Like I said, we do coaching and mentoring, and a lot of it, if you got one question or, you want to pick my brain for a second, that doesn't cost anything. I'm always there. I answer the DMs and everything and whatnot still. So that's the best thing. Get some advice.
How do people get in touch with you if they do have a quick question?
Yeah, so if you DM Blacktop Banter, that's going to be the easiest way. If you go through the businesses, you're probably going to get the runaround that will tell you to, hey, DM Blacktop Banter. You can do it in the comment section. I've been in this game now, social media wise, for about 10 years or so, and I've seen every type of person that would comment from top to bottom. I got no problem going to war and putting them in their place if they want to. But also, if you generally are coming at me with a sense of positivity, you're going to definitely get a great answer. And I take time for everybody. I'm pretty proud of the fact that, we get a lot of DMs, emails, messages, calls, and we return all of them to try to help and give back to our community.
That's awesome. So thank you for doing that. That sounds like a fantastic service to the community.
Yeah. I mean, the Blacktop Banter's on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We have a huge following on TikTok. Probably our largest following is there. And then YouTube. So you can do that. You can email blacktopbanter@gmail.com. We'll find you that way too.
And real quick, I just want to highlight this one. Nikki says she recommends State of Demand Gen for podcast/marketing nerds.
Yes.
I'm sure we have a lot of those listening in.
I had no idea that I was a marketing nerd, right? Like we work with companies and different brands now within the podcast that want to work with us. And when they bring up their marketing challenge that they have, I literally get excited figuring out how to crack the nut that they can't crack through our podcast. And it's a great time. We've had great success. That's a good one. That's a good one. I'm going to take that advice from her myself.
And Nikki also says here real quick, looking forward to coming to Asphalt Conferences to meet you.
I am too. We have National Pavement Expo is a big one here this year in Charlotte. It'll actually be early next year, but you might catch me around at some different ones between then.
Awesome. So one thing I do want to do now, you mentioned, cracking the nut you can't crack. And I'm sure that, so as I said, we have a lot of pressure washers who listen to the podcast who are just starting to grow their business. And a lot of them also have been growing the business and are looking to take it to the next level. And they could be anywhere on the spectrum of business growth. So I recommend, if you are stuck and you have a nut you can't crack, obviously reach out to the community, reach out to mentors, coaches, but you have another great resource here in podcasts that have experts on. So in Blacktop Banter, I know you cover a ton of different topics. So what are some of the top topics you'd recommend someone comes to check out from the pressure washing industry?
Yeah, I mean, anything marketing wise is always a great story. There's a couple that I did personally without any guests that kind of tell our story about how we started and things that I've realized getting from point A to point B. One of the most recent ones is Changing Your Atmosphere, which you and I kind of touched on earlier. Mm-hmm. Another one is called the $10 Turnaround, where I had $10, man. I had $10 and half a tank of material, and promised that day that it would never get to that point again, and I would figure out how to get away from that situation at all times. So those are a couple of my favorite ones. But really, anytime we dive into marketing and branding, you end up with the sense of we have to be in front of people,
Mhm.
right? We just have to. We have to catch attention. We have to be in front of people. There's a lot of expert advice out there for how many touches, I'm air quoting, touches it takes before somebody recognizes who you are. I'm pretty proud of the fact that where we are, when anyone thinks seal coating, whisk coat is what they think of, right?
Mhm.
They don't go into Google and type in seal coating companies near me. They type in
Wow.
whisk coat. And if you can get your brand to go from being one that when they type in Google, seal coating companies, you're in the top ones, to the brand that when they go to Google, they just type in your business name. That's when you've elevated to the level of I'm a brand building son of a gun, man. And that's
Mhm.
something to be really, really proud of. It's not easy. It takes going a little extra mile than what anyone else will do. And it takes understanding how to get to that point. And, it's unorthodox stuff. It's stuff that we're not taught in school. It's stuff that we're not taught really when you start your business at all. So if you can dive into any of the marketing ones, those are the ones.
Absolutely. You actually had a recent one I saw with a Genie
Ring
Ring
cop.
Cup.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I recommend that one. Go check that podcast out.
She's a
One,
genius.
yeah, and one of the most like profound things you just said here was the difference between when someone Googles your business, having you pop up, and then someone searching your business.
Yeah.
So there's so much competition out there, and
There's
people are putting ad spend. They're bidding to have theirs come up first. So that is so important to say, hey, how can I kind of circumvent that? And so how do you start from that? How do you start with that, with the branding to get seen? What is that? Just constant posting? Is it being everywhere? How did you start that?
Well, if you listen to Grant Cardone, it's just nonstop content full until and never stop. Just turn the faucet on and never shut it off. Which, okay, if you're in Grant Cardone's shoes, is easy. You can hire people to do that, right? We're not necessarily at that level, I wouldn't
Mhm.
think. And I know I'm definitely not. What's crazy is, Jeannie is an expert at strategy, and there's a reason why you have to apply strategy as well, because my business here is a lot different than my friend Daniel's business in Charlotte,
Mhm.
or it's a lot different than my friend Mike's business in Nashville. So you have to recognize the unique situation that your business is in, and then design your branding and marketing campaigns around that situation as well. If you're in a large city, there's a lot of noise going on, right?
Mhm.
Like you could be posting great stuff that you're doing as far as within the community or make attention catching videos, but if you're not putting some kind of ad spend with Facebook or Instagram or whatever, you may not catch attention. I got news for you. If you spend money here in Wisconsin where I live on Instagram, you better not expect a return. These farmers aren't on there, man. They're on Facebook looking at pictures of their kids who played in the football game. But guess what? Those kids are p- children of people that they know, right, in these small communities. So that's really how we grew the brand here at Wiscoat, which is far different than how we're growing it in Dubuque. We grew it off of Facebook, giving back to our community, which we naturally do anyways. I enjoy it anyways. We highlight that. We give back to our community. I would make eye-catching videos right out of the gate so that people would stop scrolling, and they would just be organic videos that I made through friends. And eventually it just got to the point where whenever anybody would mention asphalt maintenance or seal coating, they mentioned us. Now in Dubuque, we took a different tact. We hired a marketing team because I knew there was a lot of noise there, right? And people are moving a lot faster in the cities than they are here.
Mhm.
So I coupled a marketing team that would work with my Instagram and Facebook posts that we are paying for, and we're seeing the ROI on that too. So it just takes a little bit of strategy, analyzing each one, and learning your methods, all of which you can do personally. You don't have to hire a team or have somebody out, but it takes a little bit of work, man. It ain't easy. You know that.
Yeah.
It ain't easy, man.
It ain't easy. And while you might be able to do it yourself, we've had some conversations about this on our podcast Under Pressure about how you can kind of cut off the learning curve by hiring a third party to do it for
Bingo.
you. And now it's not another hat you're wearing. Well, you can
Yeah.
be out making money doing jobs or
Yes.
building your business. You don't have to worry about that. Someone can do it better and
Yes.
for more value.
Yeah, Jake, you nailed it on the head right there, man. I mean, isn't that the whole point of what we're doing, right? Is to
Mhm.
create more revenue. And when I had plenty of spare time, right, when the phone wasn't ringing off the hook, I had spare time to make that content, right, and put that stuff out there. Now, when I'm doing that, I feel like I'm wasting time. And at one point, that was like I was making use of my time. We do a lot better job now of having companies and outside contractors that repurpose our content, put stuff together, develop a strategy, and we make the content and get it out there. So you
Yeah.
hit the nail on the head. There's two spectrums of that.
Yeah. And you know what? We're not experts in marketing, and there are
No.
experts in marketing.
Yes, there are.
Who
There
could
are.
do a much better job for the money. So we do have a couple comments in here, but going back to the learning from the atmosphere you're surrounding yourself with, we got a quick one here. I recommend reaching out to family and friends of all industries. We often have the same struggles. That
Bingo.
is true. In all small business. And as an entrepreneur, I know you know this, Marvin.
Yeah.
So we do have some questions from TCOM Industrial Services coming in here. So how is the economic shift affecting the maintenance side of your business?
So one thing I've always enjoyed about the asphalt maintenance business is that when things are going bad economically, people opt for asphalt maintenance versus replacing their current asphalt. Therefore, we're in the money. Now, when things are going really well, people often say, well, I guess now we have some extra money to spend on our asphalt. So they'll get it maintained. So for us, we usually see a bigger shift towards doing parking lots and whatnot during great times, which is fantastic. And then during bad times, we'll see a shift towards residential. But either way, the guys that are in the industry notoriously know that for the most part, unless it's a deep, deep scale, like we're talking '08, '09, you do pretty well no matter the season. I don't want to say that it's economic wave proof, but if you are strategic and you have some good leaders and mentors around you, you do fine either which way you go.
Mhm.
The other thing too is with an economic shift, we've noticed that technology is really starting to come on fast in our industry. We
Mhm.
went from the way that we used to seal cracks behind a big machine, kind of like what you see on the roads, to now a company has developed a robotic crack filling machine that's on the back of a bed. Literally, it just drives over and it reads the cracks, fills the cracks with hot rubber,
Wow.
eliminates people, eliminates danger, right? People getting hit out on the road.
Yeah.
So, economic shift. If we're talking about employment problems and whatnot, that's another way it's been affected. That people are inventing and becoming ingenious about how to
Mhm.
circumvent employment problems.
So what I see talking to a lot of contractors and going to events is you see some have their head down and they're not really focused on the state of the economy and they're not really focused on what the new innovations are. And then you see a lot of people who are really hyper focused on that. So my question to you is how do you keep your finger on the pulse to understand the innovations and keep up with the innovations like the crack filler or to keep up with the economic shifts? What do you do to really keep your finger on the pulse?
Well, I think it depends on, honestly, how successful do you want to be, right? I mean, if you're looking to be me at an early age and just make beer money, you don't have to be so submersed in it, right? But if you're not, if you're on my spectrum that I am right now, I don't want to miss a thing. Whether that's through Pavement Magazine, whether it's through the Blacktop Banter podcast, I'm really proud of the fact that I write for Pavement Magazine from time to time. I'm really proud of the fact that sometimes I can get the jump on what's going on before they do because they come to print once a month, right?
Mhm.
So we're able to have somebody on the podcast and crack that nut. My Instagram's able to do that. So follow whatever industry you're in, follow like companies, right, on Instagram and see what they're up to. We follow a lot of companies because I want to see their techniques. I want to see what they're doing differently. And then same thing with there are multiple podcasts within every industry. If podcasting isn't your thing, like I said, a lot of people like TikTok, man. Like we're over 30 some thousand followers on TikTok, and I know that there's
Wow.
at least 100 different asphalt companies that are on there too. And I'm huge fans of theirs. Like I want to stay submersed in that too. So the main thing is whatever your industry is, there's plenty of resources there. Submerge yourself in that. Why
Mhm.
not? What else are you going to be filling your time with? You're going to be, for me, I'm an industry geek. I want to be successful. This is the only thing that I really, really do. I play fantasy football with my friends here in town. Besides that, I don't have very many hobbies, man. I like to vacation, and go see my friends and that kind of stuff too. But, I'm submersed in this because I enjoy it. That's where I get my satisfaction from, is making sure that I'm sharp, dude. I'm on the front of my game.
And you can really tell that you enjoy it. So we got a little note of encouragement here from Pave Pro. They said, "Let's go, Marvin."
Dude, that's good people right there. The Rigsbys, yeah, they're Carolina boys, and dude, they same thing. They're big proponents of the industry. They share a lot of stuff from other contractors on their stuff. You're starting to see that shift now, right? Where
Mhm.
manufacturers and people are doing that are proud of their industry, and they want to highlight that too as well. Those are good fellas.
So I want to get to this question that Pave
Okay.
Pro brought up, but real quick, I do want to say this really ties into a conversation we had on the podcast with Joe Ozark, or Joe from Ozark Fence. One thing Joe said is that pressure washers are made for social media, like TikTok. You
Oh
have
yeah,
30,000 followers. I'm sure your TikToks are very just very easy to start with, right? In the asphalt industry, it's just here's the job, it's the before and after, it looks beautiful. With pressure washers, do you see a massive opportunity of the before and after and how satisfying the process can be?
absolutely, dude, absolutely. And to be honest with you, it's just consistency.
Mhm.
Right. I'll
That's the
I'll
key.
notice the algorithm will treat me like a king one day for a week, for a month, and then it'll treat me like a peasant for another month, and then it'll come back up. We consistently try to post content that catches eyes, like I said. And I know the pressure wash has got that, dude. Like literally, if you show me a wand, like I shared one on ours, right? And it was a drone that had soap hooked to it flying up a building, and
Mhm.
then it rinsed the building off, dude. When it came down, it sprayed water down. That's probably, I think it had like 30,000 views or something like that. So I mean,
Wow.
if you can do that, it doesn't have to be on TikTok, right? If we're talking about companies where they're like, I don't care how big my TikTok is, no one cares. But if you can create a video on TikTok that does that with some good music, right? Then you share that to your personal Facebook page or your business Facebook page, and somebody sees that, they stop. They stop like that. And they're like, what am I looking at?
Mhm.
That's your moment, man. That's your moment to capitalize. So take that moment, refer to your business, have your business tag there, whatever you're going to do. I'm a big fan of turning the camera around and not being scared. I got a lot of guys that give me grief about what we do, but I never see them turn the camera around and talk about themselves or whatever, and they go work a 9 to 5 and pretend that they're happy or whatever. And I know they'd much rather be out doing something like we're doing, pressure washing, putting fences in the Ozarks, or seal coating huge parking lots, and then feeling some accomplishment.
Well, thank you, because that leads perfectly into Pave Pro's question here. And yeah, pressure washers, you have such an opportunity for endless content. Every job you go on is opportunity for content. So, as Pave Pro said here, Marvin, what are your biggest tips for growth on social media in our industry?
Ooh, these guys do a good job. They're catfishing. They do a good job. I follow them on TikTok and Instagram, and they're good fellas. The main biggest one is to create content that's memorable, right? That's the biggest one, man. And you have to catch their attention right away and create content that's memorable.
Mhm.
They do a really good job of that at Pave Pro. They're probably wanting me to do this, right? But they have a great product that you see in notorious in our industry, seal coat that is caked onto something, been there a while, or asphalt that's caked onto something. They have a pump up can and they spray it right away. So immediately you're like, what's going to happen, right? Like they get you, they hook you just like that. They're like, shh, and you're like, well, what's going to happen? And
Mhm.
then they explain what they have and what they're doing, and you hang around through all of that because you want to see what's going to happen. That's the thing. Those are the major keys. Catch them, do the ask or whatever, or the
Mhm.
sell, which they don't. They mainly just say how good their stuff is. And then they take a scraper and scrape all that crap off in one swipe. And you're like, oh, yeah, it's good. Right. And
So
they have you memored.
with these social medias posts like that, you see two tactics most of the time. Sometimes it'll be that one video where they hook you right at the beginning and then they get to it. And then you see a lot of the videos where someone will show the before and say like, follow, and subscribe for part two to see. They kind of hook you in the first part, and then they in the second video they'll have you go look for it on their page
Oh,
where
yeah.
they complete the job. So do you use that tactic? Would you recommend that, or would you say it doesn't matter which one you do?
Man, I don't. I'm a big fan of if I have to do multiple things to get the end result, I usually don't go all the way through.
Just do the
Right.
first one. Yeah.
Right. So, like, let's just say, for example, I make a Facebook ad and I say, look us up on Google. And meanwhile, I could have just did a call to action button that just said call now or send us a text. What do you think the chances are that somebody's going to go on Google nowadays, type in your name, then try to find that and try to find that? They don't. They want it's a sad thing to say, but our society is a society of simple gratification now. Right?
You're setting up barriers to entry. You got to make it easier.
Bingo. Yeah. So to me, I always try to knock it out. I mean, to be honest with you, we as a society are moving at such a fast pace, and TikTok gives you 3 minutes. If I can't sell you in 3 minutes on what I do, that's on me. Right. So it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're a service business, you should be trying to finish and close and do everything all in one video. Now, if you're trying to grow your TikTok channel and be a social media influencer or whatever, then yeah, that tactic's okay. Go to a different one and go to a different one. But, I like the elevator pitch, man. It may be the only time the algorithm throws that video in front of them ever. So why waste it by saying, tune in next time? I'm like, nah, I'm good, man. I'm good. I would just assume push out another piece of content in place of that second one.
Well, and if they can't find it fast enough, good luck getting their attention back, because you're competing with all the big companies that are spending millions in ad spend.
Yeah, man. Yeah. And that's you hit the nail on the head. Like with so many businesses, so many people, and so much going on in our everyday lives. The fact that you are in front of somebody's face for even a millisecond is a gift in itself. Try not to waste that.
You're not just competing against other competitors. You're competing against the Metas, the Facebook, the Alphabet with Google. Yeah,
dude, like you've been working your tail off to get branded enough and go through these algorithms enough to get in front of somebody. That'd be like completing a project and not asking for the check.
Yeah.
Right. Like you got yourself all the way there. You worked yourself all the way to the end, but you're too scared to knock on the door. Like, no. We're not doing that.
Yeah. So we do have, first off, I'm going to get back to this question in a second, because we do have Ron Musgraves chimed in with awesomeness. Thank you, Ron. I'm very happy you're listening today. Ron is awesome. Big pressure wash guy. Thank you for tuning in, Ron. And I hope that we pull a couple of things from this podcast that we can talk about in further podcasts with Ron. So here we go. We got a question from TChem Industrial Services. This one first, a point. They said that's a huge point. You don't want them searching seal coat or pressure washing for that matter. You want them searching for your company. That's the game in marketing. Absolutely. Correct. It's like a tissue, right? No one calls them tissues. They say, hey, do you have any Kleenexes?
Right. Yeah. And that's how you want it to be. I mean,
and right here is also in searching, we say on this live podcast, we said Google it. But the term is searching.
Bingo, dude. And that's the funny thing about it is people say that, right? They say Google it. And there's some people that are like, oh, I got to go get a pair of Nikes.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're not really going to get a pair of Nikes. They're going to get a pair of shoes, maybe a Nike, right? But maybe not. So to me, I think that if you can have that mindset of how do I get to that point, right? Of where they're thinking, if they think of this product or this piece of whatever you're doing, your service, and literally they think of your name, dude, it's game over. It's your game to lose at that point. You would literally have to completely derail everything you've been working towards, because that's not going to happen overnight, right? Unless you completely go viral and you're like the corn kid from TikTok, right? And the whole world knows you immediately, right? Like, unless you do that, you've had to work to get to that point to get your brand to where it's synonymous with
Yeah.
the service. And you would completely have to derail and become a completely different person again in order to derail that thing.
Mm-hmm. So Nikki says here, Ron Musgraves, I've seen a lot of guys asking lately in the groups for pressure washing about doing parking lot paving. This is a hot topic. And so that's
Nice one, Nikki. Nice one. Hot topic. Get it?
yes,
Yeah.
it is a hot topic. And that's why they asked this question of when looking to get a job for parking lot maintenance, who should you be talking to? Is it the same person as I might get the cleaning contract from?
You know, sometimes it is and sometimes it's not, right? Sometimes it's the owner. Um, you know, when you're talking about paving or parking lot maintenance, more than likely if it's a parking lot, you're talking big money, man. Like money where that guy that probably, was like, yeah, I'm free to spend, a few grand or whatever it is, 5 figures or whatever, and you're coming at him with a 6 figure number where they're like, well, I gotta talk to my boss or I gotta talk to so and so. So what we end up doing, and I do this with sales, is when we go somewhere and I notice anything, right, an opportunity for us to upsell anything, I'll mention that. And then I'll say, if not, if you could put me in touch with whoever is in charge of that, I'd be glad to show them what kind of value we can offer with what we do. And usually that's how I leave it there. I'll leave a couple cards right in their hand. Like it's just like, to me, it's just like when you get their moment of attention on uh, a post,
Mm-hmm.
right? You have it for 1 second, so don't blow it. And
Yeah.
if you don't take the opportunity to upsell anything different, you may never have that opportunity ever again, man. And even when like we have guys that we interview or there's people there and I'm like, they must not want it bad enough, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes if you're not going hard, people that are in the position to make those decisions say that to themselves. Like, they don't want it bad enough. I'll ask whoever because they did. So I don't drop the ball, man.
Yeah, and as Eminem once said, if you had one shot or one opportunity to
Yeah.
seize everything you ever wanted, would you capture it or let it slip away? Right?
Dude, I can think back with cringe-worthy memories how many times I was laid up to slam dunk and I just sat in the crowd and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
dude, dude, dude. And
Mm-hmm.
now when I get that layup, I'm running from, not physically because I'm not in any kind of shape to do any kind of athletics, but I'm running up to dunk that thing from the free throw line if I can get my hands on it. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where all of a sudden your mindset shifts, right?
Yeah.
To where you're like, dude, I'm seizing every opportunity.
And you know what? You had to learn that the hard way. I'm sure you, by letting some opportunities slip, you had a visceral reaction to that. And you said, I'm never letting this happen again because it hurts. And so
Yeah.
now, with podcasts, with the resources we talked about at the top of the show, like books, podcasts, conversations like this on lives, you can cut off that learning curve. You don't have to learn that lesson yourself. You can go talk to someone like you, Marvin, and say, hey, what do I really have to be careful about? And now, from your experience, someone can learn, all right, this is how bad things can get if I don't seize those opportunities. I got to seize those opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, there's plenty of stories that you could share, right? Of people that we know that wanted to get into the industry and kind of didn't, they had more important priorities than the way that I would prioritize things. And they just don't get there. They just don't make it. It's like I said, it all goes back to sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
Was I comfortable as an introvert? Absolutely. Right. Like I didn't even want any confrontation. I didn't want the conversation to even happen and anything. That's where I would have stayed forever. And
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't, you and I would never be talking. Right.
Yeah.
And there's no way Blacktop Banter wouldn't exist. Wisco probably wouldn't exist. I wouldn't have been able to sustain at that level of comfort. So it takes getting uncomfortable.
Absolutely. I'm sure it does take getting uncomfortable. And so for someone who is introverted and doesn't want to take advantage of some of the things we've talked about earlier, like reaching out to mentors, coaches, getting involved in communities, getting on social media, what would you say to them? Just do it. What is the tip there? If someone's introverted, how do you get over that?
Yeah, I mean, if I'll give you some advice right now. Go look at my first videos. Go listen to my first podcast. Go look at my first videos. If you think that I don't look back at those and wince, you're completely wrong. Like
I do
literally,
too.
dude,
It's
I
my
look
own.
at those, I'm like, oh my gosh. But there was a hard realization that, as I said, like, dude, I knew that if I didn't do it, what I wanted would never come to fruition. Right?
Yeah.
It was just never going to happen, man. So, that's what I did early on is I would make videos and watch them back on myself. And dude, I would make sure that it was only me watching it, right? There was probably 20 videos that were listed as private on YouTube because I didn't want anybody to see them. And at one point, I got so nervous that I erased those videos. And I wish I never would have done it. I wish I would have just stuck with it. I was like, I can't do this. I'm too uncomfortable. I get anxiety over it. I'm not going to do it. And I erased them. Little did I know that my conscience that already knew that I had to do it would come back and be like, you have to do this. And once we did, on the opposite, I had a conversation with my friend the other day. On the opposite side of that wall where all that fear was, there was nothing there.
Yeah.
Like it was literally, there was nothing. I was scared of nothing, which made no sense. It was all good on that side of the fence. So I would do that. I would get comfortable. You have to get comfortable with yourself, right? With holding the video to yourself. Now, luckily, we have a videographer, Wise, who's a good friend of mine now, and I don't have to hold the camera so much anymore. I still like to do it. People are used to me doing it that way, so I still like to. But yeah, I mean, just get comfortable and get comfortable hearing your voice. That's a hard thing to do. When I go to post my content and I hear my own voice on Blacktop Banter, it took a long time before that sounded like the voice that's coming out of me right now. And that's okay. Like literally, it's all okay. This is a normal thing now.
I'd say it's rare or impossible for someone to just step into this stuff and be comfortable. So you do have to. It's through repetition and practice, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's all it is. It's literally getting comfortable with how uncomfortable you are. Like that's the first bit of it. And then all of a sudden when you start to see a little success, right? Like when you start getting comments like, "Oh man, you killed it." "Oh, I loved it." Or, "We want more." Whatever comment is going to come from it, the confidence that goes to this level off of this size of a comment, all of a sudden you're like, "Dad, this is cool. I like it now." Oh, we're getting more contracts. We're landing contracts. You seen my video. Like you literally seen the video. We would get contracts like that where we seen the video of you doing, whatever it was, this gas station or whatever. And I'm like, oh, really? Yeah. And if you can do that one, we want you to do ours. I'm like, well, can I tell you a price first? It's like, no, oh yeah, we need a price, but we want you to do it. What a crazy position to be in, all from getting over a wall where there was nothing. And on the other side of it, you were scared to death, dude. It's so ridiculous.
And we talked about, staying up to date with economic shifts and innovations. And I'm sure that throughout the process, it's a process of evolution. We talk about in marketing, we talk about split testing, right?
Right,
How you're
yeah.
going to try multiple things. You're never going to say, hey, this is it. And if you get hung up on perfection, you're never going to start or try something. You're going to be just stuck there trying to get perfection. So I see what you're doing is you're constantly evolving. You're just evolving because you're learning as you're doing.
Yeah, it's becoming a natural thing. I mean, I got a young guy, Eli, who's playing football. This is his first year playing football. He's a wrestler, always has been. This is his first year playing football. The first time he went out, all I ever did was play football. I didn't wrestle. First time he went out, man, it looked bad. I'm not gonna lie. It looked bad. It looked rough, and he got mowed over quite a bit. He didn't move. He didn't function like he should, but he kept going out. And pretty soon, after he got hit enough, he learned just to step out of the way a little bit, right, and let those guys catch him on the shoulder or completely miss him. That's how this is. That's how social media and getting out there, if you've never done it, that's how it is. You're literally going to get going. Now, I watch Eli dive through holes, chuck people over, spin moves, hurdles. He even did a quarterback slide as a running back because he was scared to get hit like later on, right? Like down the line. He's like, I got to run more. Like I'm not going to take this hit. So that's exactly how it is, dude. You just have to get out. You have to do it. You have to adapt. That was the best advice I ever got from the green industry, was from a friend named Keith Kalfas. And he still follows me. I still follow him. We don't contact and talk as much as we used to. But literally, when I asked him how I do it, he's like, you just have to do it. Like that's it. That's the advice. You just have to do it. And I didn't just throw it all out there as he suggested. Like I said, I made private videos and kind of, I did my best to prep myself for it.
That's awesome. And that is the best advice. And you hear from everyone, just go out and do it. And if a lot of people are saying that, it's probably true. So, and if Marvin's saying it, it's definitely true. So get after it and go for it. And even Nikki chimes in here with, oh no, come on, Jake. Brad Williams loves it and is so comfortable. That's everyone who, you're not comfortable when you first start. It takes time to figure it out and learn as you go. So my question, with all the stuff we've talked about today, and how you can, obviously everything you're doing in the asphalt industry and with your podcast, it's all applicable to growing a business in the pressure washing industry. And so now, with all that in mind, Marvin, what would you say are some of the biggest opportunities pressure washers should look out for in the near future, and what are you excited for in the near future?
Man, to be honest with you, I'll start with the first part of that, and then you have to remind me of the second part, right? About what I'm excited about. I never stop looking for opportunity, right? So when we're on a driveway, recently this year, we seal coat from the concrete, whether it's a garage or an apron or whatever, back to the road. Most of the time, if we're going to do it, sometimes that asphalt goes right up to the garage, but we were on a project where a customer asked us to come up and they wanted us to seal coat their concrete because it was so cracked up, right? And I'm like, well, it's not going to stick. It's not designed for that. They had a couple of pieces that had been sunk in and then they were jagged, right? They had ledges, and the guy's like, well, I'm going to have to tear this concrete up. And we had recently worked for a client where they had mud jacking, right? So but they didn't use mud jacking. They used a polyurethane foam. So they drilled holes, put foam in there. Those are some of the most appealing TikToks I've ever seen in my life. They do a time lapse of them, and dude, I can't switch it off. That's the kind of stuff pressure washing is. When I watch them do time lapse and they're going like this with the surface cleaner, dude, I can't stop. But that was an opportunity that I seen to where I'd only seen this one other time, or twice, I guess, in our area of the concrete lifting. And it was like, okay, there's an opportunity here. Whether I sell it or whether we actually do it ourselves or whatever, there's an opportunity there. So I think that that's the main thing, right? Those are the opportunities. The crazy aspect of being in a service business now is that if you get really good at it, like if you're really, really good and you post that you're good and you're winning awards, you're getting accommodations, doing whatever, then there's an opportunity for you to mentor people and create a business completely out of consulting or anything else in general, podcasting, right? So, those are the opportunities that are there, man. I think my biggest piece of advice is get really good at one thing until you have free time to be open-minded about other things. Once you have some free time to be open-minded about other things, then you can start looking and taking advantage of it. But if in the moment the customer throws you a layup to upsell, you better snag that ball, man, and do something with it. Even pass it out to somebody that can make the shot. I don't care what you do with it, but you're going to have your hands on it at some point.
Wow, absolutely. That was great. And so the second part of that question is, what are you excited for? What are you excited for coming up?
Dude, I'm a complete nerd. Dude, I used to play video games. Unbelievable. I actually held a world record for a game called Aegis Wing, and it was kind of like noticed by the Guinness Book of World Records. So I played video games, dude. I was a big tech head. I would have every headset, everything. That went away in my mid-20s, right? Once I realized that I wanted more for business-wise, I barely played any video games since then. But technology, I'm always geeking out about. We got right now I'm live on Facebook on one phone. I got my camera up here. I just recently got this condenser microphone that I love, right?
It sounds amazing, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much. But the other thing is I'm invested in a company that is making recycled plastic asphalt. I'm invested in that same company holds the contracts for the robotic crack filling machine,
Mhm.
right? I'm super, super excited about technology. And I know that bothers some people because they're like, well, we're going to take away jobs. Dude, we can't get people to work.
Yeah.
We can't get people to work. So they took away their own jobs. I'm really excited about that because, as I stated, when you get to a certain level of success, you're able to have free time to open your mind up. I'm excited for the fact that we're getting to a place with technology that hopefully we get to a place where more humans are able to spend more time thinking about what makes the world good, right? Versus
Mhm.
what makes it bad. That's what I'm excited for.
That's awesome. I love that. And wow, that is amazing right there. There's a lot to be excited for. There really is. And so my next question to you, Marvin, is with all of this we've talked about, I know that, when you go to conferences or you listen to a podcast, you might get overwhelmed in all the things you add to your checklist, of the things you're going to do. And you don't know how to prioritize it. So can you help us out? And for someone who's just starting their pressure washing business and looking to grow it, what would you say is the priority that they need to focus on to really take their business to the next level? Something actionable coming out of this podcast.
Oh, the very first thing and the most important thing is to change your atmosphere if you're not in the right one.
Mhm.
Like I know I've preached that a lot, but literally, it could be some of the hardest decisions you've ever made to eliminate things that aren't breeding the atmosphere that you want it to be, whether that's people or, things you're involved in or whatever. Um, there is no better actionable move than changing your atmosphere for success. Like you have to, because if not, it's like kind of like when I try to go on a diet, right? Like I'll go on a diet, I'm like, I'm only gonna eat vegetables. And then all of a sudden I go to my friend's party and he's got wings and then they got cheesecake and then they got everything else. If I went to a party where everybody was vegan, dang dude,
No
no
problem.
no longer is that hard for me, right? So that's the comparison that I would make is even if it's not within your industry, one of the very first masterminds I was in was lawn care and landscape, and a guy that creates ponds for some of the biggest rap names that you could ever imagine. I was in there as an asphalt guy with no bearing on anything they had insight in, but that was my atmosphere. Whereas guys that wanted to be successful in service businesses, once I hit that cap right there, I graduated and made my own mastermind. And then I brought those guys in, right? And that's the main thing, dude, is changing your atmosphere. If ever you're comfortable in there, that scares me. When all of a sudden I realize that I'm one of the most successful people in the room or area or atmosphere, then I get nervous.
And that's important to look at. I love that. So look at that first. That is something you could do right out of the gate. You turn this live podcast off, or you heard it in a Facebook clip or something like that. You turn this off, go take note of your atmosphere and make sure you're not the smartest person in the room. Because Marvin, I'm sure some people love that, but you're right. That's so dangerous. I'm sure that's when you start to slow down. When you're the smartest person in the room, most successful in the room, is that when it all starts to go downhill?
Dude, to go back to that analogy, right? So let's say I spend 2 days being vegan and I lose 2 pounds, right? Well, then when I go back to that party, I put 5 pounds on. I went 3 the other way.
Yeah.
Like the basic math, and that's the same thing with what you got with your friends too, right? Or whoever is in your circle. It's you can't sustain a high frequency. We're getting into some business theory here now,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
which is different, but you can't sustain a high frequency surrounded by low frequency. It just doesn't work. I mean, if let's just say we're flying model planes, right? And if everybody is on the same frequency and you're the only one that's off, you're going to stand out for a little bit. But only one or two are really going to fly in the other frequency. And they're going to
Mhm.
be, we used to race RC cars and they only ran on 47 and 24 hertz or something like that. And literally I would be controlling the other cars because they were all on the same frequency. You have to change that, dude. You have to. If not, you're going to be going all kinds of directions and never really making the progress that you're looking to gain.
Agreed. 100%. So I'll give an opportunity real quick. I know we have a couple people watching live still. So I'm going to say any questions that you want Marvin to answer live before we wrap it up, please get the questions in quick. But Marvin, I want to give you a moment here. This has been an amazing interview. We've gone for about an hour and 10 minutes. So I want to give you a little bit of time here. What are you up to? Where can people find you? I'm sure your podcast is on everything. But where should people find you, Marvin?
Yeah, so we have a lot going on here coming up. I'm going to be in Ohio at the Street Luge downhill race. I'll be there the end of September. Mid-October, I will be in North Carolina at a couple manufacturers there, making some content, creating content through one of our partners here for the banter. And then I believe I'm going to go on a little tour in November. So you can follow along there on Instagram, on our TikTok, LinkedIn, everywhere. I really have some friends that I've been promising I was going to get there and see them that I'm going to do. I don't know if I'm just going to, most of the time I would just take my truck and people would let me crash or I'd get a hotel or whatever. But I've been looking at these like little teardrop kind of camper trailers or some of these other ones. And I'm like, dude, that would be cool. Like to hook on there and just be like, go on a little tour and be able to, right. And create content with it would be awesome. But I don't know how that's going to be. In December, I will be at the Ignite conference, which was geared towards high-level contractors within the asphalt industry. I'll be moderating a panel there and speaking. That's in Clearwater Beach, Florida. And then that next month is National Paving Expo, where you can catch us there. We'll have a booth there, a Blacktop Banter booth, be taking part in some live podcasts there, working with some of our partners, giving out some free stuff. So I'm excited for all that. If you follow us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, if you follow me personally on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, you'll be able to keep up with that and kind of see where we're at and what's going on. Should be some articles coming out in Pavement Magazine here pretty soon. I'm excited for those, working with some of my friends on those ones. It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time for our industry, not just my businesses, but the industry.
It is. It truly is. There's a lot of opportunity out there, and there's going to be a lot of changes coming to it, and that's always an opportunity.
Oh yeah. There's people kind of get nervous sometimes when they're worried about change and what's going on, but I've always gathered opportunity from it. It's all perspective. I got a really good friend, and that's his mantra is perspective, and it's all in how you look at everything, man.
Well, a great perspective that I love to pull from Game of Thrones, from Littlefinger, is chaos is a ladder. This is always an opportunity when things get shaken up, when the economy shifts. It's always an opportunity to get yourself to the next level, to grab some market share, to take advantage of a new innovation.
Yeah. I think some of the mantras that we speak to the guys here in my teams here is that if it's going to go down, we want to be the last one going down with it.
Yeah.
Right? Like I want to be the last one standing, and going back to sacrifice. Sometimes that's what it takes, but then other times it's being aware enough and to know that you have some opportunity that you cannot let go.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah. So with your podcast, if anyone has been listening to this show, I'm sure they're very curious about your podcast. Where did they find the podcast? Is it Spotify, Apple, all of the above?
Yeah. So we're on Apple Podcast and Spotify are the two big ones. I think there's some other platforms there, but if you type in Blacktop Banter, you'll find us. Otherwise, on YouTube as well, you can catch the video versions of everything we do, as well as some other fun content, right? So we try to mix it up, and I try to keep some stuff exclusive, right, to certain platforms. So you can follow us on TikTok too, as well, at Blacktop Banter, Instagram at Blacktop Banter, YouTube at Blacktop Banter, and we mix it up. I really, I have somewhat of an ego, so I want the content with my face on it to do really, really well.
Of course.
But that's not always the case. Sometimes it's just us broom and sealer down, million views. Me dropping a great dime of knowledge that the whole world could use, 1,000 views. It's like, man, all right, we'll post the attractive videos.
That's great. So, wow, go check out Marvin Joles on every podcast app, every social media app, Blacktop Banter, at Blacktop Banter, and all that. I'm sure that you have endless content that is just full of golden nuggets of information that can be used for any industry.
There's a lot there. That's for sure.
So thank you so much for your time today. I know you're a busy guy, so I really appreciate it. Thank you for all this great information for pressure wash professionals. Thank you to everyone tuning in. But seriously, Marvin, thank you. We appreciate you coming on today.
Hey, man, no worries. I'm always good to talk shop. And, you know, it doesn't really matter what industry it is. There's a lot of parallels if you just step back and take a look. And anybody can you take something from any conversation. And I've taken a lot from this conversation. I'm looking forward to hopefully being able to do some more conversations like this in the future. And I love doing cross-industry stuff, man. So I really, really appreciate it.
Not only would we love to have you back on more live shows, and especially when Brad comes in, because I know Brad really wants to have a conversation with you on here, we will definitely have to get you for a recorded episode as well.
Cool, man. Sounds like a plan.
All right. So thank you, Marvin, for coming on. Thank you to the audience for tuning in today. Thank you for liking, subscribing, sharing, all that. Please rate and review the podcast on all the podcast apps. It helps us get seen. And as always, the most important part, if you know someone in a small business, in a pressure washing company, any contractor that can grow their business by listening to this podcast and the fantastic experts we have on, like Marvin today, please share this podcast and all the content with them. So thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week live at 1 p.m.